I'm Jeff Ravel. I'm a good friend of Shigeru Miyagawa, and oh, by the way, I happen to be the head of the MIT history section.
So thank you, Jeff, for taking the time. I know that you're awfully busy. So we are about 3 days from going fully online. As head of a very important section, you must be talking to a lot of people, both inside your section, maybe also around you. I'm wondering what you're hearing from people. That's one, and also I'd like to know what you yourself are doing to prepare to go online.
We have held 2 Zoom meetings so far for all faculty, lecturers, and graduate student TAs who are teaching in history classes this term. And they've really been just kind of open conversations. I've led off with some of the information that I've been getting from central administration, and especially from Krishna and his team in open learning to support what we're doing online. But really, they've just been sort of open conversations all the way from what are your expectations and what are your strategies to should I buy a better microphone to do this with? And we had a conversation last Wednesday that was kind of interesting because I started off by saying, okay, so what are you hearing from your students? And are they getting situated? Do they have the hardware and Wi-Fi access they need? But also, you know, how are they thinking about continuing with your history subjects in light of the world falling apart around them? And it was very interesting. I got 2 absolutely opposed responses. One was from my medievalist who's teaching a class on the Vikings, and all of his students have said to him, Eric, we just want to learn about Vikings. We don't want to talk about COVID-19 or anything having to do with it in this class. We want escape.
I'm very sympathetic to that.
Yeah. And then the other colleague is teaching a class on the history of capitalism. And his students want to do nothing but talk about how a pandemic has an impact on politics and political economy and the economics. And so he's not going to be able to escape at all. But I suspect those are the 2 sort of outlying poles, and our students and our instructors are going to experience everything in between. So, I mean, the content will be interesting. I have another very senior colleague who said to me, you know, in a funny way, I am just really looking forward to getting back to teaching, even if I don't exactly know how I'm going to do this. It's just something that I can control to some extent, as opposed to the world around me. So, you know, it's a brave new world, and it's a scary new world. And I think what we're going to do in the history section going forward, we're going to continue to have these weekly meetings. And I think some of my colleagues are meeting in smaller groups with each other. They've been practicing how to use Zoom and how to use the breakout rooms and that sort of thing. So I have a lot of confidence. I mean, we're a unit that really takes our teaching seriously, and it's really rewarding for us, and the teaching is linked with the research and the other things that we do. So I think we'll do the best job that we possibly can, and hopefully just be patient with ourselves.
They're also very lucky to have as their head someone who's very seasoned. You've been the head for some time, and this is a time when leadership is extremely important. To listen to people, to bring in resources, and to help guide people. And so they're very lucky to have you. You mentioned that people had to learn to moderate their expectations. I believe Megan was someone who went to do a workshop, and she has on her slide, you know, the first thing is 2/3. You know, don't try to do more than 2/3. It sounds like everyone's coming around to that. What do you get a sense of what people are willing to give up in order to moderate their expectations?
I think they're starting to figure it out. I think, for example, in the case of that one instructor who's teaching the CIH class, that instructor is thinking about having fewer total pages but maybe shorter assignments, more of them than you would normally have in a CIH class, something along the lines of, at a weekly pace, a shorter 1 to 2 page paper that would hopefully be part of the structure of keeping the students engaged for the last 6 weeks or 7 weeks of the term as well. Another instructor, actually the instructor who's teaching the history of capitalism class, has already decided that his final assignment is going to be a sort of take-home essay, and the question is going to be, you are the nominee of a major political party this summer. Write the speech that you will give about your program for addressing the public health, economic, and political crisis that we're in right now.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so I think, those are the kinds of things that people are going to be doing. Yeah, I think one of the things that's going to be, it's not a challenge, we'll figure it out, but it's just going to require some creative pedagogy, is thinking about how to do oral assignments and classroom discussions in the online Zoom environment. I think it's really challenging because you will not have all the cues you normally have from the students, and they won't have all the cues they get from you either in a residential education situation. And so I think both sides are going to have to work pretty hard to communicate, to make up for that communications gap that will be missed from the residential education part.
Yeah, that's the part where we receive energy from students when we teach classes, and that's that keeps us on our toes with their questions, but just sort of eye contact and so forth. I was talking to one person from philosophy who actually voiced this concern that she designed her class, an ethics class, to be very interactive, and that's how she was carrying on her class right up until March 10th, when we got the message from our president. And she was very concerned as to how she was going to continue her class, with these assumptions. I'm going to talk to her tomorrow to see where she is. But so that's interesting. One thing that MIT has decided is the grading policy, right? We're going to pass, no record. Has that had any impact so far on people thinking about how they're going to carry their lessons online?
Yeah, I think that was part of the conversation, the sort of difficult conversation I described having with my colleague a little bit earlier. She sort of caught on to that a lot more quickly than I did, and realized that that gave instructors more freedom to restructure the class in ways that accommodated the online learning environment. So I think most of my colleagues are happy. No, I think all of them are happy, because that's the worst thing about being a teacher, is having to dole out those stupid A's, B's, and C's at the end of the semester and justify to the students why what they did was a B and not an A or whatever. It's kind of like the work product that this capitalist enterprise of MIT produces, and we're the laborers in the whole system.
We are, definitely, yes.
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit liberating, and that's the way that I think most of the instructors in the history section are going to experience that. I was a little surprised at the student petitions saying that they really wanted to have the grades, until I realized that it was a concern about getting into law school and med school. So I understand that, but that tells me in some sense that we're kind of failing in communicating to the students what we think is really important about the education that they're getting. Maybe that's an impossible ask, because they are the age they are and they think about their careers the way they do. But that was kind of an interesting wake-up call to see those petitions.
Yeah, I've heard that complaints have come from students. I've not heard any complaints coming from faculty. Maybe there are complaints, but my sense is that the faculty are finding this to be liberating, as you said.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly what you said, that we sweat out is a B plus or A minus. And it's, there are better things to do, but for the student, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So, um, and I would imagine that the kinds of assignments that you talked about may not be possible if we were to grade uh, some of the open-ended assignments
Hmm.
that people are now thinking about.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I was just going to say, actually thinking about some of the classes that I teach, although I'm not teaching them this semester, a class that I've been teaching a lot since I've become head is a class called Making Books in the Renaissance and Today, where a large component of the class grade is a exercise printing using a letterpress that we built and we have up in the 8th floor of Barker Library. And at some level, I mean, I always give that assignment an A, B, or C, or D or F grade because that's what's called for. But it really should be a pass, not pass kind of assignment. And I'm kind of sorry I'm not able to teach that class this semester. Of course, if I was teaching it, we wouldn't be able to get into Barker Library anyway, so it wouldn't work. But yeah, maybe one positive, well, it won't happen, but one positive outcome of this from faculty perspective would be if we could go to more pass, not pass kinds of classes.
yeah. Okay, on that note, do you see what the faculty are doing now to teach online actually possibly change the way that we do things even after we get back to normal teaching?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. I think it's kind of impossible to know because the answer to that question, every instructor is going to come to a different answer to that question as they improvise over the next 6 or 7 weeks. And I have no doubt that some of us are going to find strategies and techniques with online technology that will really enhance what they do, and they'll incorporate it into teaching strategies once we return to residential education. But I also have been very cognizant of a lot of the blogs and things that people have been writing. You know, I'm sure you've seen them too, these articles that urge us to do a really crappy job of teaching online because if we do it well, then university administrators across the country will decide that the online model really does work and they'll do away with residential education
I
and
have not seen
with
this.
tenure.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, do a Google search on do a crappy job teaching online and you'll get some interesting articles. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I sort of understand that. I mean, some of the articles I've read who've been doing that teach at state universities, which aren't the flagship universities in the state, but other universities. They're already under financial stress even before this. They're being asked to do much more for much less pay than they really should be. And it's kind of a rebellion. It's kind of, you know, up yours to the system kind of response. So I get that. But, you know, we are just in this really privileged, fortunate position to be teaching at an institution that has so many resources. And it just, that argument did not resonate with me for the most part, although I think we always need to be vigilant about administrators dictating teaching strategies to us.
Absolutely. I will. I mean, I had not heard this, so
Yeah.
thank you for letting me know. Um, I know you have many things you gotta do, so I don't want to keep you too long. Uh, Let me ask one thing. One thing that came out in my discussions with Megan, as she gave like 15 two-hour workshops in a matter of 4 or 5 days.
She is a hero. She's a definite hero.
Well, she's a hero in many ways. She was the one who noticed in early February that Asian universities were starting to teach online
Mm-hmm.
because of the pandemic. And she, early in February, went to Krishna and said, we got to start planning just in case.
Mm-hmm.
They had no idea that whether MIT or anyone else would need to do it, but they prepared for months not knowing whether their preparation was going to be useful at all. And then March 10th, the message came from Rafael. And March 11th, they opened up everything that they prepared. So she is truly a hero. I'm trying to do actually a story about that. I think this is a real MIT story.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one thing that Megan mentioned is that there's a whole range, spectrum of expertise with technology,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you've been dealing with technology through your projects, but she said that there was someone who actually didn't know what a browser was, which is amazing. But even more amazing is that this same person is going to start teaching online come Monday. I mean, do you find that you must have find, like if John were teaching now, he knows what a browser is. I think. I
Yeah, I
think.
think so too. Yeah.
I taught him. So, but not too much else. I mean, are you finding this range in your unit?
um, I think, yeah, I think everybody who is not emeritus, who's still teaching, knows what a browser is. I think we all now use Stellar, the course management system, and feel comfortable with that. I think the barriers here have to do with the aspects of Zoom, and particularly the breakout rooms as a way of constructing discussion sections. I think the idea that you can record a session, or that you can use Zoom or PowerPoint to record a lecture that would be delivered asynchronously, I think that's not a common experience for many of us. But I have a lot of confidence that most of the faculty in history, probably all of the faculty in history, who decide they want to have some sort of hybrid synchronous asynchronous model will be able to sort it out. Megan has been fantastic. She did one of those 2-hour sessions with us. She also sat in on the first Zoom meeting we had to talk about teaching strategies and helped out. And I think everybody in our section knows that they can shoot her an email if they can't find an answer to the question elsewhere. They all know how busy she is, so they don't want to overtax her. I think most of our colleagues are going to sort this out. And, I mean, I think also we shouldn't necessarily assume that all of our students are going to be better at this than we are. One thing I've learned is we all assume that all of our students know how to code and build websites and everything else when they show up at MIT, and that's not the case either. So I hope we'll have a lot of patience with the students as they struggle through figuring out how to use the technology to enhance their education as well.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. Are there other things that come to mind before we close out?
I just think I don't think the struggle is going to be the technology. I think the struggle is going to be keeping connected to MIT, for both the faculty, for both the instructors and the students, because just that daily ritual of coming into the campus space, going to the classrooms, seeing professors in office hours or elsewhere, that keeps you grounded. That keeps you there in MIT semester reality. I think it's going to be pretty hard for people to continue to feel connected when they're at home and they're with their families. I mean, even in normal circumstances, it would be hard. And now when some of our students are going to be experiencing illness and perhaps worse, that's not going to make it very easy to connect. And some of our instructors are going to be experiencing those things too. So I think that's my biggest concern right now, is just the dedication to the educational project that we're embarked on with the students. It's just it might have to take a back seat to some other very real life things that are going to happen over the next 6 or 7 weeks.